Hey, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. I'm Dr. Ariel Hammond, and this is the Enrichment Entrepreneur, a podcast for current and aspiring entrepreneurs who are in the business of helping kids thrive. We're talking after-school programs, summer camps, tutoring, enrichment, the people and places that show up for kids outside the classroom. I'm still building right alongside you, and that's exactly why we're here, to learn, grow, and figure this out together.
Let's go!
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Ariel, and today I have a very special guest, Jason DeRocha. Did I do a good job?
Perfect.
Okay.
Better than 90% of the teachers I've had in my life.
Okay, cool. Jason, you've been doing enrichment specifically in the Canada area, teaching physical literacy and really carving out the research space for that and opportunities for entrepreneurs to get into youth enrichment through Sportball. Before we get into all that, though, who's Jason?
So I guess how I would define myself first, I think father, I have two young girls, 9 and 11, who have me wrapped tightly around their fingers, and I'm happy to stay. And I'm married. I live in Toronto, Canada, and born and raised here. I'm an athlete at heart. I've played very competitive basketball and volleyball growing up, but a lover of all sports. Studied psychology in school and always wanted to work with kids. I've always had a passion to work with young children. I think probably because I feel like a kid at heart. I feel like I'm getting older. Chronologically, but developmentally, I'm sure my wife would agree. Developmentally, I still feel like I'm very young, and and I feel like when you work with kids, it keeps you young. And so I've been very fortunate enough to study psychology, specialize in child psychology, and find a career in working with kids and playing sports. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 20 years. Sportball has been around for 31 years now. We're in our 31st year of business, started in 1995. But I joined them 20 years ago, just over 20 years ago, and it has been a wonderful adventure.
Yeah. So when you first joined Sportball, it was very small and local. And what did you see in what they were doing that made you want to stay?
So I was working as a cognitive and behavioral therapist for children who had special needs or exceptionalities. And the founders of Sportball, Mark and Kamala Gelgor, said to me, look, we had this wonderful program where we introduce children to sport at a very young age. Our goal is to really help to develop their physical literacy and their social skills. And we have a strong demand from families who have children with special needs who, although we integrate children into our mainstream typical classes, would benefit from an adapted program. So they asked me to come on with my background and skill set to develop an adapted program so that I can take the heart and soul of the methodology and integrate some of the social skills component, which were a lot of the skills that the families that I was working with and the children that I was working with, what I was focusing on, to use Sportball as a conduit to really teach to the gross motor and social development that I was hoping to develop in young children. And so I developed an adapted program and established partnerships with the Geneva Center for Autism, the Bob Rummel Center for the Deaf, the Down Syndrome Society. And what we found really quickly is that all of the skills that we were teaching, like pro-social language, turn taking, initiating conversation, making friends, paying attention, following the rules, these are skills that all children need, not just children with exceptionalities. And so we started to embed a lot of the social skill components into our methodology. And I had the opportunity to grow with the company. So the organization liked my work for what I was doing in the adapted programs. And they said, look, do you want an opportunity to become the director of training and develop a curriculum? And that's when I fell in love and decided to stay, because now I get a chance to really make an impact on not just on the children, but then also the coaches who are working with the children. And to provide them with tools and resources that they need so that they could be successful.
One thing I wanted to pull on a little bit more, some in this space who are considering getting into kids enrichment business, they may come from different backgrounds and maybe they feel that does not prepare them for that. But I can easily see how your background in cognitive behavioral therapy could actually be a strength, a unique advantage in this space. How did that shape the way that you think about enrichment programs and that you go about coaching? We'll get a bit more into how you all coach your coaches and how does that live in the structure of Sportball?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think well, the one thing that I think my background really allows me to do is really meet children where they're at. I think
Mhm,
that's really the most important thing. We all have these wonderful programs and services and products that we offer kids, but I
mhm,
think a lot of time and attention needs to be put into understanding where are children developmentally, and then understanding that every child progresses at a rate that they're comfortable with. And I've had experiences where some children have never touched a ball, and then you put a ball at their feet, and it looks like they could be the next Pele or Ronaldo. And
mhm,
I've seen other kids who've been working at, who've been playing and being exposed to sports at a young age and been getting all sorts of support, but they still take a little bit longer to develop. Some people are naturally inclined and have these natural abilities. And so the goal really is to look at every child where they are and then take whatever methodology or system or service that you have and tweak it so that that child can have success or a successful experience in a way that they're comfortable. And I think that's
mhm.
really in line with how we would teach children how to read. We all want to get our kids to a point where they can read a chapter book or a novel one day and they can
Mhm.
bring that book to life in their imaginations. But the first thing that we do is we start with really simple nursery rhymes and songs and learn
Yeah.
your ABCs. And then you go from, introducing letters with pictures to then maybe removing the pictures and then moving to more compound words and then building on that. Like we make sure that we scaffold learning so that children develop competency and so their confidence goes up. And when their
Yeah.
confidence goes up, so too does their passion and willingness
Mhm.
to learn. And you apply that same approach to sport, and that's what we did at Sportball. We applied that same approach to sport. And then all of a sudden, when parents came in the room
Mhm.
or other program partners came in the room, they started to say, wow, like my child, who I didn't think was ready for this because they are too young or maybe not developmentally there, this is an organization and a service that meets me and my child where we're supposed to be and where they're
Mhm.
at. And then I can build accordingly.
Yeah, that's a gem to apply in life in general, the knowledge that competence, more times than not, precedes confidence.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times we say, "Oh, I'm not good at this." Well, just be confident and just do your best and
Right.
but I need to experience some type of success in
Yeah.
some similar transferable area or this so that I can build that confidence. Without it,
Absolutely.
it's just hollow. And yeah, so how do we create those opportunities for children? And really, just thinking of children, they're just all of us are humans, just on a different spectrum of the age range. So as an
Yeah.
adult, if I go into recreational softball or the gym or something like that, and I want to learn a new skill, if everyone has to do everything at the exact same level, how many people are not even going to go into that environment? That is so intimidating and excludes so many people if
That's right.
it's not approachable and if everyone cannot engage at their own level of competency and readiness, and especially with like physical abilities, there's a
Yeah.
lot of stigma and shame that comes with not being able to keep up with your peers when you're looking to your right or your left. So it's even more important to intentionally carve out like a safe and fun learning environment for children.
Yeah, especially at early ages, right? You want to
Mhm.
be able to build a foundation of passion and joy and fun for children. That's what they're looking for the most. Am I in a safe environment? Do I feel welcomed in this environment? Am I going to be judged? Like all
Yeah.
of those important feelings that kids need to develop at a young age. I've met so many people as an adult now who can remember negative experiences that they had, whether it's with a coach or with an experience in a sport where they didn't feel supported or they felt like they failed at something, even though maybe it wasn't necessarily failure. They interpreted it like that because they didn't have proper coaching or mentors or peers around to really support them. That the positive association that they needed with at that time wasn't created. And so when they got older, they almost have it. It's like there's a disconnect from physical activity and
Yeah.
sports experiences. And they've almost become averse to it, which
Mhm.
is really sad because these are experiences that they had, 10, 20, 30 years ago. And what's really interesting is when you talk to them about that experience, it's like it was yesterday. They can
Yeah.
remember what they were exactly how they were made to feel in that moment. So it's
Yeah.
incumbent upon all of us that are in the enrichment space to make sure that we are building those foundational experiences and skills so that children can develop a lifelong love and passion for learning and feel trust and safe in those environments.
Agreed. Agreed. Next, I wanted to talk about a term that you taught me last time we talked. Physical literacy. You had to
Yeah.
send me a tutorial after an explanation video because it was the first time I'd heard of it. And I'm like, wow, I guess I've been out of the education research game for a minute. I know literacy, I know emotional learning. I know those, soft skills, literacy in those areas,
Yeah.
but I had not heard of it with physical literacy. And once you explained it to me, intuitively it made sense.
Yeah.
So for those of us listening who are like me and may not have heard that term before, can you tell us what physical literacy actually means for a parent or for a coach that hasn't heard of it yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as children develop, their body continuously develops at different rates. It's really focusing on the fundamental movement skills so that children can develop with competency and confidence. So it's both. But in order to get there, it's like children, they first learn to crawl and then to stand and then to walk and then to run.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing that applies to every aspect of physical development. So whether it's throwing or catching or stepping or jumping, all of those physical skills have underlying building blocks. So
Mm-hmm.
things like balance and coordination and timing, strength and conditioning, all of those aspects are what make up a child's physical literacy. And so the goal is to exactly what I said earlier, focus
Mm-hmm.
on where the child is and what that first step is in the developmental milestones. You have these developmental milestones. You have social and cognitive and emotional and physical,
Mm-hmm.
finding those milestones for those kids and then meeting them there, exposing them to those milestones, and then building on those physical attributes until running almost looks like breathing and
Yeah.
jumping looks like breathing and throwing and catching. But it's because you were able to meet them at those fundamental building blocks. That's what physical
Yeah.
literacy is.
You know what that reminds me of? A saying it just keeps toiling in my head recently because I'm doing a bunch of new things today. I had to create a Facebook page. I am too old to be creating a Facebook page, but I have to do it. I do it for the enrichment entrepreneur
Sure.
community. Y'all are on Facebook. I finally accepted I have to get on Facebook. I was anti all of that for so long. So it took me so long to toggle through and figure out how to create things. And what I repeated to myself over and over again, everything is hard before it is easy.
Yeah.
And so that's just what it is. Some of us go through the hard very quickly and maybe we enjoy it. So we don't remember it as being hard. We don't remember it as being difficult, but I can't think of anything that's not true for. And
Right.
especially with physical learning, with learning in general, even the behavior, the skill of learning accelerates over time.
Absolutely.
But in the beginning, learning is difficult, and especially
Yeah.
things where we might not have as much exposure to it. Like I think of when I was a little kid, I call myself an indoor kid, like an indoor cat, an outdoor cat. I was indoors. I did not like physical activities. I really didn't. I did not have the confidence or the competence in that area. So that makes me think of the importance of meeting kids where they are and then getting them to their full potential, knowing where they are, measuring that, and then helping them grow accordingly.
Yeah.
So also talking about measuring, I love data and research, and I was just so intrigued that your organization partners with educational institutions to create third-party validated, robust research show the impact of your methodology, of your approach in working with kids. So many of us, we can say an impact story at this one kid and this mom, but it's a different thing to have a trend that holds as you
Yeah.
scale and serve tens and hundreds of thousands of children per year. So can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah.
What does that process look like, and why is it important for those of us in this space who hope to grow and we take our craft seriously,
Yeah.
to seriously look into the data to validate the impact that we're having?
Yeah, so I think it's twofold. One is when Sportball started in 1995, um, there wasn't a lot of research, especially because we were exposing children to sport at such a young age. Now we work
Mhm.
with children as young as 16 months. Sportball is a sports enrichment program for children from 16 months to 12 years of age. But in 1995, we were working with kids as young as maybe 2 to 3 years old. There
Mhm.
weren't a lot of resources and research that we could lean on when it came to exposing children to physical literacy and sport development. And so a lot of what we did, I would say, in the first decade was through trial and error. And I think that there's a lot of merit in trial and error. So you learn a lot from getting out there and being in the arena and working with kids and working with teachers and working with parents, and what works and what doesn't. And that applies to every aspect of what we do: the language that we choose to use, the
Mhm.
equipment that we're using, the skills that we're using, the games that we're playing, the class management strategies that we're using, all very, very important aspects of sport ball methodology. But you have to really look at it through the lens of, if I'm going to say that this is making a difference, this piece of equipment or this game or this activity or this skill work is making a difference, at some point you need to validate that, especially if you're making a claim to a parent so that they spend their hard-earned money to come to your program.
Yeah.
So I would say, once that, about a decade into our program of a lot of trial and error and what works and what doesn't, we
Mhm.
then thought, okay, well, we have a great following here. Parents love what we're doing. We're starting to be asked to go into schools. Let's partner with a major academic institution. And we are based out of Toronto, Canada. So we partnered with the Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy Department. And we had a 5-year placement opportunity with master students who were
Mhm.
studying to get their OS and OT degree. They would come in every summer and they would do various projects with us. So they developed an assessment for our adapted program to ensure that we can adapt our our gross motor skills, our obstacle course, our sports skills, so that if there was a child who was maybe in a wheelchair or not independently mobile, or required some form of adaptation in order to perform a skill successfully, they
Mhm.
provided those resources and manuals. The other thing that they did was they actually developed, using developmental milestones, an assessment on whether or not children who are participating in sport ball programs are actually developing their physical literacy. And so there's a number of resources in Canada. The Canadian Assessment of Physical Literacy, we have the LTADs, the Long-Term Athletic Development Model, that's been put out by Canada Sport for Life, another wonderful assessment of children's physical literacy. So we took a lot of these assessments and we developed our own measurement tool within a sport ball program to see whether or not children are developing their physical and social skills. And we actually ran research in our program. We had a control group and a sport ball group. And we measured the impact that sport ball had on the children that participated in the programs, and then just
Mhm.
kind of where children were at who were not participating in our program. And we did that over the course of a couple of seasons. That research was put into a peer-reviewed journal. We were able to measure outcomes and see that children who were in sport ball had a marked difference in terms of their physical literacy and development. The other thing that I thought was really wonderful was kids are really young to express socially how they're developing, how they feel. So one of the things that we did was we actually had some of the students, or not students, participants in our classes, just draw a picture, like how they felt in the beginning of the class and how they felt after a sport ball season, and just to see whether or not we can see a difference. And then obviously we had our questionnaires for parents as well. How was your child's confidence? Were they excited to come to sport ball? Were they excited to play sports, and before sport ball and then after sport ball? And we saw a marked difference, which allows us to continue this incredible partnership with the University of Toronto's OS and OT department. And they developed a number of resources that helped parents to understand what the value was in coming to a sport ball class. So the social skill development, the physical development, the socio emotional development. So we actually started to develop a lot of resources so that we can educate parents as well. We then partnered with the University of Toronto, and we did this really wonderful study with children with congenital heart defects who don't have necessarily the capacity to participate in a lot, especially high cardiovascular programs. They just don't have that capacity to participate. So we adapted it and we ran it. We had a master's students from the University of Ottawa run that program for us. And we had the exact same outcome. Children who weren't able to participate in the beginning, by the end of it, they could participate for a longer period of time. They had a higher sense of self and confidence, and competence in their physical abilities. And it's just something that we've always committed our energy to and focus on, because we want to just make sure that, parents have to make a dollar today is harder than it's ever been. And there's so many places that you can spend that on your child so that they can enjoy, some type of physical development and wonderful experiences that brings joy into their life. We just want to make sure that if parents are coming to sport ball, that we are providing that value in return. And I think that's the responsibility that we all have in an enrichment program. So those are some of the things that we're doing on a regular basis to ensure that we have a valid and reliable methodology. And then the other piece is just, it also lends to, which I'm sure you're going to ask about next, is our training to ensure that we are providing that training to our coaches so that they're ready. Because that's really what it's all about, right? The coach.
Yep.
At the end of the day, the teacher and the coach is where rubber meets the road, so to speak. And we want to make sure that we are equipping those folks with the resources, and whether it's workshops, training videos, lesson plans, curriculum, leadership opportunities, we want to make sure that we are equipping those coaches to be the best that they can be on our end. And then, of course, they have their own skill set and ability that we look for when we're hiring.
Quick break. I'm building NROPS, an all-in-one operations platform built specifically for kids enrichment, entrepreneurs, and operators. I built it because I needed it. Go to getinrops.com to learn more and get on the list. Okay, back to the episode. Yeah, I did want to segue to that. My transition. So I forgot what the transition was, so I'll just have to wing it now.
Sure.
But you have a mentorship model, and it's really unique. And I think it's really cool using the coaching experience as another opportunity to build up the next generation and build up their skills. So your mentorship model, the rookie coach all the way to master coach, what does that progression look like in practice?
So every single coach that we hire, we first want to make sure that they come with some prerequisite skills. So we want to make sure that they genuinely love working with kids. They have to have a passion for working with kids. They have to have a passion for sports and physical activity, because then we want them to be authentic. We don't want to say, well, do as I say, but not as I do. Right. We want to make sure that we match both. We also want to make sure that they have their police clearances, their vulnerable sector police clearances, so they can work with the vulnerable population, which is usually young children. And then the other piece is that they also have first aid and CPR, because this is a sports program. And even though we're working on very basic fundamental movement skills and very introductory sports lessons, we still want to make sure that if, in an event where there was an emergency situation, that these coaches are trained effectively to deal with it, whether it was an injury or worse. We want to just make sure that our coaches are prepared. So that's what they need to have coming to the table. Most of our coaches are either university or college students. Some have graduated and become teachers, but we also have some grade 11, grade 12 high school students who are standout in their schools. We would look to hiring them. And what does it look like? So once we feel like this is the right candidate, they then come in for a working interview. So it's one thing to say what you want to do, what you want to get out of this job, but then we need to see you in the gym with the kids. So we actually have almost like a tryout where kids are out there with these coaches and they get a chance to lead warm-ups, give instruction, interact with the children. And if they check all of those boxes and they have the prerequisites, they then move on to being hired, and they're hired as a rookie coach. When you're hired as a rookie coach at Sportball, you are put in the field with a mentor coach. And a mentor is you're going to be essentially like your Sherpa, your guide from rookie all the way to mentor and eventually master level coach. And the goal really is we want to make sure that we give context to the experience. So we don't want coaches to show up to a gym and say, okay, well, I've coached soccer before, I've played soccer before, so, let me run with this. Now, our goal is really to ensure that they understand that there is a methodology to how they teach a sport ball class. So we go from everything from the way you welcome a parent when they walk in the gym, to how you greet a child, how you mark them in it safely for our attendance, how you warm them up, their mind and their body, how they practice their skills, and then how you even dismiss that class. How you make the announcements to parents and say goodbye and thank them for coming. And then make sure that throughout your class, you're coaching with purpose. All of these aspects a coach is trained on. And how we train our coaches is they start as a rookie, and there's several workshops that they do. And we have an online learning management system. And the coaches have to complete those workshops and courses online. And then they also have assessments in class. So they have a mentorship package that they fill out, or a program that they fill out, which kind of marks their journey from class 1 all the way to class 8 or 10. And they get feedback every step of the way. We give them a little bit more to do each and every week. And then by the end of that first season, we give them an assessment. So they complete their courses, they complete their workshops, they get the hours under their belt. And if they complete all three, we move them from rookie to lead. And when you're a lead coach, what that means is you are now qualified to lead a program on your own. And then there's workshops that we've developed for that level: class management workshops, coaching with purpose workshops, communication, customer communication workshops. And as you get from lead towards mentor level status, you would have completed not just a series of courses and workshops, but then additional hours. So you need a significant number of hours as a lead coach, leading programs on your own in order to get to mentor level status. And the reason why this is so important is to do something yourself is completely different than to teach someone how to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so what we do is once the coach becomes a lead coach, we then train them on how to become a mentor coach, which means taking a step back, giving an opportunity for somebody else to step up, and then you not prevent them from falling, but to kind of give them a hand and stand them up after they've fallen, guide them on where they could be better, and then showing them the ropes and how to become eventually a mentor level coach one day as well. And those mentors not only train coaches in class, but we also get them to do workshops out of class, both virtually and in person. And then after that stage of mentorship, we then move coaches to master level. When you move a coach to a master level, that essentially means that they can hire, train, and promote coaches themselves. And they also know how to do sport ball demonstrations. So let's say there was a school that said, I'd love for you to come into an after school program for me or to run a co-curricular program for me. We can send a master level coach out there to deliver the most wonderful sport ball experience. And they'll know how to communicate with not just the kids, but the teachers, the principal, the program partner, and the parents. Whoever's in that space, the master coach knows how to communicate what they're doing in that gym to get the most out of children.
You've worked with many business owners in this space over the years.
Yeah.
Probably, hundreds at least on a first name basis. And some who have the revenue, the profit that many of us aspire to, that top 10, 5, 1% of business owners in kids enrichment space. And you probably have met many who started and nope, and maybe didn't want to put in the work, and the delayed gratification was just really difficult. And being in that build, providing value space, maybe it was just a little too tough. What do you see as the difference between those who persist and reach their goals and build the business of their dreams, and those who, it's more like grand opening, grand closing, and they don't stick around?
Yeah, it's a good question. In business, if you don't have grit and determination and that stick-withiness, it's going to be hard to survive in any business on the planet.
In life. Yeah.
In life. Yeah. It's business is not for entrepreneurship is definitely not for everybody. So I think that it needs to start there. You have to realize that you have to take a long-term view on a business like this in particular. There are other businesses where I think there's more immediate gains and short-term reward, but I don't know anything in life where I'm satisfied that fills my cup with short-term reward and immediate gains. It's great for a moment, but then you almost kind of you start seeking that. That's all you look for, and you can be disappointed very quickly because there's just few and far between where that's the case. So I think, having that long-term view is really important. I think the other piece is have to be very specific and targeted in terms of the goals that you set for yourself. So, we use something called OKRs, objectives and key results. So we're very clear on what are our objectives as an organization. So we have an obligation to our customers, we have an obligation to our coaches, we have an obligation to our shareholders, we have an obligation to our communities. So if you know that this is our focus, this is the difference, this is where we're trying to make a difference, then what is it specifically that what are the key results that I can measure to know that I am meeting my obligation to each one of those parties? So I think being very, very clear about what it is that you're trying to achieve and focus on those efforts and measure whether or not you're getting closer and closer to it. And if you're not, maybe it shouldn't be an objective. Maybe that shouldn't be something that you're measuring. Maybe that needs to come off of your list, but you need to be very, very clear in terms of what it is that you're trying to achieve as an organization, as an individual and owner of a business. And I think the other piece that's really important is making sure that you find a balance. It's not enough to just be passionate. That advice is just follow your passions. Well, it's great. But, there's some, like you said, there's some realities, when there's budgeting issues, following your passion may not pay the bills. And so I think it's important to, if you don't have a background in a specific area of business, whether it's accounting or finance, bookkeeping, marketing, then you need to build your team. You need to leverage people that have that specific skill set so that they can support your efforts and help you to achieve what you're setting out to achieve. You want to focus on the things that give you energy, that fill your cup. And if there's things that you just don't fill your cup and give you energy, then and you're going to let that fall to the wayside, then that's not a good thing either. You want to make sure that you're bringing in somebody that can help you to either understand that or to run that aspect of the business for you so that you can focus on the things that give you energy. So if you don't like looking at spreadsheets and you don't know how to keep a book, then find a bookkeeper and find a solid
Right.
accountant so that they can keep you organized and on track. And it will be worth the investment because in the long run, you're going to need it in order to build a successful business. So I think making sure that you have a balance of both understanding what the skill sets are in running a business. And if you don't have it, finding someone that does and bringing them into the business. Yeah, I think specifically in the enrichment space, because our goal is really to make a difference within the community, right? You're working usually out of schools and, municipalities and whatnot. I think you have to be present and engaged in the community. I think it starts there. They are at events at the community center. They are working events at the children's hospitals. They are visiting schools and being a part, participating in their family days and their events. You want to make sure that you're running demonstrations of your service. Make sure that people get a chance to sample the product before they buy. I think that's really important as well. And then now we live in the social media age. And so I think if you're not building that online presence, whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook, and sharing your knowledge with people and sharing your experience and not charging for it. Just here are like what I'm doing today and what you're doing today, right? Like we have a passion for this. There's certain trade secrets I'm sure we feel like, oh, it took me a long time to learn that lesson. But the truth of the matter is 90% of people may never learn that and they may never even employ it, even if you gave them the answer. So
Yeah.
I would say be generous with your knowledge, be generous with your experience, and you'll find that people will also be generous with their knowledge and experience, and you'll benefit from theirs as well. So it's like the rise of tide lifts all boats. So I think the most successful business owners, they share as much as they possibly can, and they give as much as they take. And I find that not only does it help them, but it also helps the people that they're hiring and leading, because then it cultivates a culture of growth and community. And I think that's really what this is all about, right? If Sportball doesn't build a culture, we won't retain employees, we won't retain program partners. It'll be a very, very long road. And I think, showing up early, making sure that you are clean, neat, and dignified, making sure that you're honest and upfront, that you are providing more value, giving people an unfair advantage. We want them to feel like if they're paying us 8%, then we're giving them 10, 15, 20% of value.
Yeah.
We always want to make sure that we're giving more than we're taking.
Yeah. That's my whole life, like goal. Give more than I take.
Yes.
Wow. There are a couple things that stick out to me from this, like a couple of key takeaways that I just want to put out there for everyone to consider. There are some of us in this space who we have dreams and high hopes. We want to have a national, international organization. And part of the pathway to get there, systems that are so detailed and lockstep and so rigorous, that's an essential part of that. So if we have dreams to scale and we want to be bigger, especially beyond our local community, first comes the systems.
Yeah.
And if we want success in different cities and states that aren't the community that we live in or grew up in, there still needs to be very intentional, authentic, robust community participation.
Yeah.
And relationship building and nurturing in all of these places, or it's just not going to work long term. So that needs to be part of whatever our goals are, because in an earlier episode, I spoke to a marketing executive and he talked about specifically in youth enrichment, when parents are deciding activities for their kids, they rely much more heavily on local sources of knowledge. So it might be person to person is always going to be,
Sure.
word of mouth, referral, but local magazines, local events. I've had parents come to see me at events that they knew the business was going to be at because they just wanted to make sure it was legit before they enrolled their kid. And that makes total sense. Before you say bye to your 6-year-old for the entire day, you want to make sure that farmers you want to make sure that you know who this person is and what's going on. So being at those events and building those relationships early and often so that you are a familiar face. And if you're in the East Coast and you have high hopes of being all the way to the West Coast, well, who's going to be that familiar face over there? That kind of needs to be part of the strategy. And when we look at those who have been able to accomplish that, they do have local presence, regardless of where their headquarters are. And so you highlight the importance of that as well. And that just takes a longer term vision of success. We have these inputs, these deposits, building up relationships, and it's not one-to-one. Some may never convert to paying customers, but we can't see things so transactionally.
Yeah.
That just leads to feeling defeated and being frustrated and burning out. Just leading with giving and being generous, like you said, and the rest will take care of itself. And that won't excuse not having systems or bookkeeping or proper business processes, but it takes all of that and a spirit of generosity and community. So thank you for highlighting the importance of that. Sportball has what most of us would dream to have: robust research backing our methodologies, career growth trajectories for our instructors, worldwide presence, opportunities for other people to achieve dreams for their families and financial freedom by partnering with us, by joining our team. It's a beautiful thing. And it takes a lot of work to get there. It's no coincidence that you mentioned 1995 a lot of times, right? It's a long road, and we have to be patient and diligent and persistent, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think thank you for summing that up. I think it takes a village, and you can get there. You can get there on your own, but you'll get there so much faster, and it's so much more enjoyable when you have, like I said, you find your tribe and you can build together. And it's really interesting as well. When you work with people from all walks of life, you continue to learn and grow and evolve. It's like I've been doing this for 20 years and I still feel like I'm a student to the game. You meet people sometimes and they could be younger than you. They could be more, less experienced or had a completely different life experience. And they come in and they just give you a new lens and angle to look at the business from. And you're like, I've been longing for this perspective for 20 years. And, I think that one of the things that happened at Sportball in 2023 was it was bought over by a new organization called Good Capital, and two partners came in, and our CEO, Quentin Griffiths, has, he didn't necessarily have a background in, sports and education and physical literacy or activity, but he thought, this is a business that makes a difference. He loved the idea of developing children's physical literacy so that they can build a lifelong love of physical activity and sport. He's also a father and has young kids, but when he came in, he said, look, I don't want to change what you guys have done so well for 30 years, but I've helped to build businesses, and I know that I can build on the back end here. So I'll help you build out, a new brand, a new website, a new learning management system, a new registration platform. He came to the table with so many incredible ideas that made all of us more efficient in what we were doing day to day for the last, like I said, 30 years. So sometimes you need that outside voice. You need that additional perspective that doesn't necessarily have the same background in order for you to move to the next level. And it's reinvigorated me. It's reinvigorated the entire organization. There's bumps and there's pain points that come with like all change, but if you can, like I said, if you're gritty and you have the long term, if you can take a long-term view and the determination to stick with it, my goodness, how bright the future can be.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay. So we're going to wrap this up, put a bow on this. If a listener wants to learn more, they want to connect with you, continue the conversation, ask a question, where can they go to learn more?
So they can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, just Jason DeRocha, right on LinkedIn. And I always respond to anyone who sends me a DM.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. And that's a wrap. We will see you
Thank you.
next time.
And one more thing. Remember, I'm building NROPS, finally, an all-in-one platform built specifically for kids enrichment, entrepreneurs, and operators. We're talking everything all in the same place. Finally, from scheduling to instructor management to partner and parent communication to onboarding and registration, all of it. I built it because we need it. So go to getinrops.com to get on the list. See you next episode. And that's a wrap. Know someone who needs to hear this episode? Share it because
Sharing is caring.
if this episode earned it, give us all the stars in a review on whatever platform you're listening on because it helps other enrichment entrepreneurs find this show.
Until next time, keep learning, keep building.